Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 25 of the Setter Tales podcast. Wade and Thomas here on this end, and tonight's podcast is sponsored by Kinetic Performance Dog Food. We built it for our dogs, but you will love it for yours. Um, we appreciate their help and their sponsorship. And if you haven't tried Kinetic, get out there and try a little bit. We've got some things going on tonight. You've just came back from a hunt today, so don't
Yes,
fall asleep on
I
me.
won't. I won't.
I've been working on buildings here at the compound, so I might be the one that falls asleep. But one of the things we want to talk about a little bit tonight is we're going to get into some areas. You are big into youth hunting, getting kids in the exposed to hunting for the first time, and it's kind of what I did with my sons. You know, I took them when they were young, and it was just kind of a rite of passage, I would guess I would say. They started walking and carrying BB guns and kind of went through that whole thing. And, you know, a lot of kids don't get that experience
No.
today. And so that's kind of the reason why the number of hunters is falling off and we're seeing kind of that decline. And we're going to talk a little bit about what it was like learning how to upland hunt with our family. And my oldest son, Tyler, who lives in the Nashville area currently. We're going to have him on here in a minute, and we're going to talk about some of his earliest memories of getting in the field and what that was like for him. We're also going to talk a little bit about dog collars and GPS collars. As you know, I'm putting my toe in the water a little bit. I'm contemplating going into the GPS world. I know that's a shock to you. We've talked about this. I'm a little, apprehensive about it, but I think it's probably the right thing to do. We're doing a little research on it, and we're looking at that Garmin 200i, which you have, which looks like it has a lot of great features. But one of the things is so I don't lose my dog, or one of these days when we're out into. And I don't really have a concern about some of the guiding that we do because I'm pretty familiar with those fields. But if you and I would go someplace out of state and you're in a field you're not familiar with and the cover's heavy, that's when you kind of worry about that dog kind of getting out of range and
Yep.
losing that dog. And so from that standpoint, we might talk a little bit about that collar at the end. So at this point, I want to bring on.
Hey, I don't want to interrupt you,
Yeah,
but you know what tomorrow is?
yes, I do know what tomorrow is.
It is opening day.
Opening
Finally,
day. Yeah.
the day
Well,
we've been waiting for a long
are you
time.
gonna go?
I'm gonna go for a little bit. Dogs are wore out. We put out of the three groups today. We put 65 birds on the ground.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to get out tomorrow. We've got some things going on, but we've kind of missed the opening day for the last couple of years, and it's one of those things that it's early, and I don't think it's going to be warm too
Yeah, it's
tomorrow.
gonna be
So
warm.
that'll be the last time I think I did an opening day. I actually did it with Tyler. I think was still living nearby. And what year was that? Maybe 2016. He'll probably remember. It was like 80 some degrees that day. I mean, it was just, we were hunting in t-shirts and it was really brutal on the dogs. So, but, so let's bring Tyler in and let's kind of take a couple swipes at what it was like growing up in a family that were upland hunters.
How's it going, guys?
Hey, there he
Good.
is. Um, like I said, you kind of moved away, and so you're kind of out of the area for that opening Iowa opener like we used to go to. But there was many years that we didn't miss that when you were growing up. Do you
No,
remember what that
we
was
tried to
like?
hit it pretty consistently. Although I remember in the later years we kind of switched to like the weekend after. So the initial uh, buzz of everybody getting on an opening weekend, eh, all those hunters, they go once or twice a year and they'd be done. So the rest of the fields were for us after that.
Yeah, it's usually opening weekend, and then it kind of peters off a little bit. Then it's Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then you really don't see much orange out in that public ground.
Yeah. So, and what we wanted to talk about tonight was just kind of bring you on, let the audience see you, and they've heard us talk about you before, and obviously you were one of the main characters and stars in the Setter Tales video series that we did a few years ago. And
Characters probably right, but star, I don't know.
well, you always said you were the talent. I remember you saying that. I'm the talent. You guys do all the other stuff and just tell me where to go, and I'm the talent. But no, that was a fun period of time, and maybe we can hit on that a little bit. But um, I kind of remember taking you guys. I know I took you, and actually had to be like 7 or 8. I don't know if you were older than that. And you tagged along, and I don't know, remember now a lot about it. We had an old dog that was kind of, oh, he was half pet, half hunter. It's kind of one of those dogs, and he might find a bird if it was laying in front of him, but we thought he was pretty good at the time. Do you remember getting out there for the first time with him?
Yeah, my first hunting memories um, growing up were probably about that age range, 6, 7, 8. We used to go to that family that we were friends with just south of Cedar Rapids. They had a little farm, and we used to go watch, or I'm sorry, we used to walk the edge of the corn with that old Irish setter, and I used to look forward to that. That was fun. Obviously, I didn't carry a weapon at that time, but I just thought it was really cool to go with my dad, and did get one, which was kind of rare because it was just usually just me and you, maybe another guy or two, but I'd get to carry it. So that I thought that was really cool. So that was one of my first memories, going upland hunting with you as a kid.
And I don't remember. And then my dad, your grandfather, would come up on opening day sometimes, and he would hunt with us as you guys got a little bit older. But I think what we see has happened in the upland world is that young people at 8, 9 years old, if they don't have a dad that's a hunter or a grandfather that's a hunter, they don't get exposed to the sport. And you know, the way I grew up and the way you grew up and the way Thomas grew up, it was just that's just what you did. On opening day, you went pheasant hunting, and during the season, you got the old dog out, and you went and chased birds. That was just part of it. So
Yeah, I have multiple theories on this with a lot of the kids that I take and just kind of watching and kind of listening to them talk, and sometimes the dads will come and drop them off, and a lot of it I see is these kids are so busy nowadays. They're playing baseball at the same time they're playing basketball, and they're practicing for basketball when they should be getting ready. They're playing football, and it's just on and on and on, and these parents, I think, get overwhelmed, and they're just, we're here, we're there, wherever. We got one kid here and one kid there, and they're like, and I get it. I don't have any kids myself, but like, okay, dad's going hunting tomorrow. You guys are gonna stay home, and I think
perhaps.
when I was younger, I went with dad, but it was never with his. He had a small circle of hunting buddies, and it was never me, dad, and 4 other guys. It was me and dad, or me and dad. Me and my brother-in-law would go once in a while, and he used to hunt. And every Sunday morning before church, we'd go on a road hunt, throw the old dog in the back of the truck, and drive around, find some fresh tracks in the snow, and walk a ditch. And had to be back. You'd go to CCD by 9:30 in the morning. And church by 10. So, but I just see that it's getting better. The kids are exposed to the outdoors, and the other thing is, this is a GPS because I can't reach my phone, but it's a lot of this, and kids get used to they just are connected to the world on by their hand, and a lot of that stuff doesn't interest them.
So those same kids would be dynamite at learning how to operate that Garmin, right? I mean, that would be like,
Yeah,
like so. Say there you go. You get
yeah,
that youngster in there, and you say,
yeah.
"I'm going to teach you how to run this Garmin," and you can run all the buttons and tell me where the dogs are and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Tyler was. I think he probably was more interested in the hunting, in the early years. Travis a little bit, but I think probably Tyler ended up going more than the other boys did over the period of time. I think and then it came the BB gun time when you got to carry what a BB gun and establish some kind of safety protocols that you knew what you were doing and how to carry the gun. So it was kind of more part of that.
I carried the pop gun, the old ones you cocked
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it, had the pop noise, and graduated the. Did we lose him?
I don't know.
Well, for a second, I think I'm back though.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay.
I was just making sure. I didn't want to start talking in case I had nothing.
Yeah, we can edit that. We got a good editor.
So I guess I guess just kind of walk us through what it was like growing up hunting and what that meant and how that kind of,
Well,
what that built on, I guess, later on into your adulthood. I know you hunted many times with me after you had left and moved away and had your own family kind of thing. But as Thomas mentioned, when you do get kids, it gets there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's hard to kind of track that period of time. But yeah, growing up, and then the day that you got to carry the gun for real. Do you remember anything about that?
I don't know if I remember specifics about that day. I remember what it was. It was a single shot 410 that you allowed me to carry. So if the dog got, birdie or went on point, I was allowed to, break it open, put the single shot in and get ready. And I say probably 90% of the time I never got a shot off, but it was pretty thrilling to at least
But you're
have that
carrying a real gun.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And
I started, if you remember, carrying a BB gun for, I don't know how many years. But, and I probably tinkering around behind you guys. I probably shot more sparrows or anything else than anything. But it was just cool to carry the BB gun. And then we practiced, firearm safety, keeping it pointed in the right direction. So that's kind of my first taste of it. But when I got that 410, I think it was New England Firearm Company, if I remember correctly. Does that sound correct?
maybe.
It's something like that.
I'm sure
They're
it
not a
was,
sponsor anyway. It doesn't
No.
I'm
But
sure it
just
wasn't a very expensive gun because it's probably, I figured it'd be in the mud and dropped and beat
Sure.
up and that kind of thing. But and I think most youngsters probably started out on something like a 410, a single shot, something that was, fairly safe to carry. And, just like you said, when you graduated to that level where here's a real gun and here's a real shell and you got to actually try to shoot at a bird, then that just upped the ante, I think, quite a bit. It kind of meant more, and now you're kind of doing the real thing. And
Yeah,
so,
I remember, like, all right, I carried the 22, wasn't allowed to shoot it, obviously, unless we were stopped and we knew what we were shooting at, and then it was the 870 Express 410, no shells, and then it did graduate to, load up but carrying that gun, and you could probably relate, Tyler, was like a rite of passage, even if it was just, it was a BB gun or a gun that didn't even have anything. You just saw your dad and maybe a buddy or something carrying that gun. It's like, all right, I'm one of the guys here. And then you're watching how they, my dad, he still carries his gun right here. He never drops it down. That's how he does it. It's just the safe way. And so you're doing the same. And if you ever got tired and slung it over your shoulder, you're going to hear it. Don't be doing that, And so, you're carrying it like this, and then, you're following the birds when everybody else is shooting at them. I can remember the first time I did that. I know the exact place I was standing when I saw the first bird, and I don't know, maybe most people don't remember that, but that's kind of how my brain operates. And I remember where I shot my first bird.
I was just going to ask that because I don't actually. I don't remember where I was when I shot my first bird, but I'm sure it was in that family farm, that our friend's farm. I'm sure it was.
probably, yeah, more than likely. There was that was, that was kind of towards the end of the 80s, late 80s. So, I mean, there were a lot of birds that were still around, especially in around Cedar Rapids area at that time. If you got out in the outskirts, they kind of dropped off later, but at that time there were still quite a few birds around, and I think that's kind of where we went. It was private ground. We knew we could get on there. They didn't have a ton of birds, but there were some
No.
terraces and there was some cover around a certain pond in the field, and so usually you could get a bird or two in the air. And then, like I said, you kind of get hooked on the dog thing, and if you have your own dog, then you get a little more um, interested in going because of the dog. You think,
Hmm.
hey, I feel responsible. I got to get this dog out. I have a dog, a hunting dog. He deserves to be in the field. And at some point, Tyler actually had a lab, pointing lab, and we took her to South Dakota a couple times, and she went all over. So,
Yeah,
but that changed the
Missouri.
things too. When you get that dog, and then that kind of that ups the ante a little bit too.
Oh
'Cause then
yeah, you feel very invested at that point, and you feel bad if you don't get the dog out there. That's what they're born to do. Is hunt. So you feel bad if they're just
Investment
laying
is
around the
the
house.
investment is the key word.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. Yes, yes. Yeah,
Uh,
his and he had that black lab named Gracie, and and she was a heck of, like all labs. She was a fantastic retrieving dog, and she could find dead birds. But she was a point stealer. She figured out that beep and collar thing. Like the 15 minutes in the field, she had that figured out. That if that
Oh
dog
yeah.
over there stops and that collar's beeping, there's probably a bird over there for me to put in the
Yeah,
air.
I'm sure your dog Lou kind of dreaded when my lab got out of the truck because he knew, oh
oh,
crap.
here she comes.
Yep,
And there
here she
wasn't no
comes.
stopping her either.
No,
She was coming, and you might as well get ready. The bird's going to go in the
we
air.
had the
But
Oh,
same
she'd come clear
scenario.
across the field.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
she'd come clear across the field to bust points. But
but
yeah,
that's the fun part is when it's your own dog and then watching your dog perform. Some of them are fantastic. Some of them are, but even the ones that are just get out occasionally and maybe are middle of the road dogs. Still, when that dog's out there, you've got
Yeah,
that feeling
and
about it.
especially right when they get that first bird up, and like even this morning, we walked. We didn't walk a long ways, but we walked long enough, thinking, "Man, where are these birds at?" And it was wet, nice, perfect sending conditions. Like, God, I hate wasting this. I didn't get to the birds, and then the dogs are kind of looking at me like, "Are are we on a nature walk or are we hunting today?" And then boom, that first bird right at the 200-yard marker. Like they tied him to the post. Like, here we go. And then it's like they find another gear. Like, all right, okay, we're hunting now. Let's get rolling. And then, it's
Yeah.
just go time. But
The and obviously these, Tyler and the boys grew up pretty much in pheasant country. We're pheasant hunters, but we did do a little quail hunting because that's what I kind of grew up. We didn't have pheasants where I grew up, so quail was kind of the game. And the few times that we encountered quail, that was pretty interesting because I don't know if you'd say you'd prefer to quail hunt over pheasant hunt, maybe not, but how did that shape up for you, Tyler?
I remember whenever we'd get into some quail, I mean, you would always get pretty excited, like, oh, this is something. This time we are kind of like, it's just another bird. But when those things get out, like they're like little mini rockets coming out of the trees and out of the brush. So it is exciting. I don't think that I shot a quail for probably the first 5 years that I was actually hunting because they're just so dang hard to hit. But um, I don't remember that we hit that many quail hot spots. We had done in southern Iowa, probably is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we would encounter a covey now and then, but just not enough to, it'd be a surprise when we did,
mm-hmm.
and then you're usually like standing there going, "What the hell just happened?" These birds. Well, it was a covey of quail, and then you'd think you could find them again, but a lot of times not. And so, but I do remember when we went to Kansas a few years ago. If you remember, we got in a lot of quail down there, and
Yes.
that was wild. I mean, that was lots of fun,
You could
and
see them in the trees and in the bushes, and you still couldn't hit them. I mean, it was crazy. You
we
what? A
have
couple
dogs.
hundred come out of there at a time.
Oh yeah, well, remember that one where we had dogs locked up all the way around us, kind of thicket, and the birds were in there. You could see them in there. And when they came out, they went every direction. I mean, it was like, and yeah, it was just total chaos. And I don't know that we killed but a few of them, but it sure was fun. Sure was fun.
It's
And that's what I grew up doing. And so if you can imagine my dad or my granddad taking me as a kid, and it was in the brush, and you're in that thick stuff, and birds are flying every different direction. The safety issues were a little bit different than with pheasant. I'm not saying that you can't, but when you got multiple birds all going different directions and different heights, and I think it can be a little more challenging to try to stay safe in those kinds of situations
yeah,
and know where your other hunters are. And for a youngster, I think that's a little more challenging probably.
yeah, and when I'm taking them, I coach them through it, and quail. I think it'd be a lot more difficult to go to somewhere that's got quail like that and have a group of kids. That'd be something you do a one-on-one with, and you can stay right on their opposite shooting shoulder and spin with them. But if you got 5 kids on a line or 4 kids or whatever it is, and even like the guys I had today that don't do a lot of upland hunting, just adults,
Right.
they're they're focused on, I got to kill a bird. This is what I need to do, and they're going everywhere. So, the guys today were safe. I always say, shoot, don't shoot, wait, okay, take it, and it's just something I've gotten used to, and I think even my buddies when I hunt with them, they're like, shut up, but um, would you shut up? I know what I'm doing,
already.
but
I've hunted with you for 15 years.
and yeah, and it just with I would love to see a kid's face or a newcomer come and have like even chuckers today. We had like 5 chuckers get up in one point today, and they're going everywhere. I'm like, okay, pick a bird, and everybody was safe, but
That
just to
was
see their eyes.
that was always the biggest problem I had quail hunting was, and my dad and my granddad told me that was the first thing they said. You pick a bird and you just stay with it. You don't, wherever you grab one out of that on the flush and you stay with that bird. And there'll be other ones that'll come up that'll look better, but you better stay on that one bird. And I always had a hard time with that. I would always, about the time I was on a bead, one would get up that would look like it was a lot better, and and by the time it was all over, I was standing there and I didn't have a bird and wondered what happened. So that's the biggest challenge with that, but it was a lot of fun.
And that's where you get lost, and the safety kind of, the safety portion, like, okay, keep swinging on the same bird. And then, oh, there's a guy standing there, so it's
it can be, it can be, that's one of those deals where you didn't hunt, like quail, you never hunted with a big party like they do a lot of times with pheasant hunting. You see these pheasant drives where they got all these guys out there, but, quail hunting was a little more of a small, intimate kind of a group of guys, and it kind of is either family guy members or people that you'd hunted with for a long, long time, and so the safety issues were a little more controlled. But yeah, I remember. I think we went down to Bear's Den once a few years ago and did a video down there, and they had quail. They were pen raised quail, but they still flew pretty fast for us. And
was that a video that you guys aired?
Yeah,
I saw.
Yeah,
that looked like a blast.
It was. We went down there and we linked up with my brother and nephew, and then obviously Tyler and Trav, and then Will was behind the camera with another person. But it was just wild because Bear's Den down there, it was a place near where we grew up. I grew up. And I bet I've driven by that place hundreds of times and I had never hunted there just because, we didn't pay to hunt back in the day. I mean, number one, you didn't have to, and, and Dad wasn't into, paying anybody to hunt. So, but anyway, we went there and it was really cool. Wayne Bear was great, and he told a lot of really interesting stories, and we got out there and put up some quail, and it was. Yeah, even the pen raised ones flew pretty dang good. I mean, it was fast, and so but it was nice to get. I hadn't hunted with my brother for many years. Never had hunted with my nephew, so it was kind of cool that we got that going.
You know, with going with your dad starting, what is one thing that sticks out in your mind that he made sure every time you went hunting, like even if it was a safety thing, or did you have a saying, or what is one thing that does stick out that he would say that you would be reminded of? I think he froze up.
I can't tell if he's deep in thought or if he's
I don't know
frozen.
if he's gonna cry or.
Apparently, I made whatever it was. I made a big impression on him.
Yeah.
He remembered it all this time.
Oh, there he
Oh,
is.
There
it
he
just
is.
buffered.
Okay. Oh, we lost him.
He's back.
Oh, no, he's still connected. I think he's hit something here, but let me try and bring him back in.
There he is. Okay.
There we go.
Now we just see Blue Man Group.
One thing that so let me think about that. We always, depending on the weather, we always tried to take a light coat, like a vest, and we always tried to take a heavy coat because you just never knew. I think Mom always made a sandwich, or we always had a cooler with a couple pops and a couple waters in it too. He always had this one little cooler. I remember that almost every time Dad would have his own little cooler. That was for hunting. That had a couple pops for when we were done and a couple waters and some snacks.
Probably toilet
I
paper
can't
too.
I can't think of any like strict rules or, like superstitions or anything. We didn't have anything like that. Just kind of get out of the truck, make sure everybody has everything they need, and take care of the dogs and rock and roll.
And see, that was kind of before, electronic collars and all that. I mean, there wasn't anything like that. So you had a whistle at, on good days, you had a whistle and you hoped that your dog responded to that and didn't get, too far. We had labs. Tyler had mentioned the old Murphy dog that we had, which was kind of, I don't know, he was kind of,
Murphy was his name. He was the Irish setter.
yeah, he was kind of an Irish setter, I guess he was, mostly. And I don't know if he knew anything about birds or not. I guess he did a little bit. He seemed like he pointed a few times, which I got all excited about. But back then, we didn't get out a lot because of the job that I had. And so, we got out on opening weekend most of the time if we could, and maybe a time or two during the course of the season. And because again, the boys were involved in lots of school activities and sports and that kind of thing. So it was kind of a limited deal. But yeah, it was always fun to go with the boys and like I did with my dad, just figure out what was going on and watch them shoot, and they all shot better than I did. I know that's hard to believe, but
Who's the best shot?
of the family,
Hmm
I
We're gonna get this brother war
I
going.
think that's pretty obvious. I would say it's me, without a doubt.
Who was the toughest? I mean, when in the dust settled, who was still standing?
well, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Will. You kind of look like you might be the scrappier one, Will.
I mean,
Like
if we're
no-
going by percentages, I usually had somebody in my viewfinder, my camera. So shooting wise, my average is probably better.
No, I'm talking brothers.
He's talking about wrestling matches growing up.
Fighting over the television
Well,
remote.
Well, here's the problem. When there's three of us, whoever was getting licked, if I was taking Travis on, he'd call for backup and he'd call for Will. So then it'd be 2-on-1.
Yeah, that's right. And then Travis got Travis got a little bigger than you did over time, and then it got to be a little bit rough that
They
way.
break
but-
anything ever?
Oh gosh, yeah, they broke stuff all the time. Yeah, they were hitting golf balls in the basement. And, you never knew.
I had to throw that in there.
Oh
Just
gosh, yeah,
to, war wounds.
yeah. So I
No
think-
stitches and stuff.
Oh yeah.
No, there were some
Yeah.
stitches and stuff.
Oh,
We had 4 or 5 volumes on the medical thing every time we went to get more stitches. So yeah, it was a constant deal for us. But yeah, he's back.
oh.
I don't know what's going on, guys. I guess AT&T down here. I don't know.
There you are.
Kids streaming
But yeah, so
I
we
don't
wanted to
know.
talk a little bit about that and just try to talk about you growing up and hunting, and then we jumped into that Setter Tails video stuff, and if you recall that, we traveled quite a bit with that, and it was kind of an
Yeah.
interesting experience.
Well,
And the whole
let me got another memory from when we were a kid when me, you, and Travis went to firearm safety, the hunters education course
oh
at
yeah,
that high school. I mean, that sticks out in my mind pretty. I mean, you went through it. We all sat through it for the 3 days. Um, that was kind of a rite of passage too. Now I'm official. I got my hunter education card. Now I can go hunt.
yeah, 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 that's right.
I
And
still
then
have mine.
that number is
Oh, yeah.
still in the system someplace when you try to get a license in South Dakota or wherever. They always want to find that number. But yeah, and I don't know. I know down there in Tennessee, the upland bird numbers are pretty bleak. There used to be good hunting down there, but there's a lot of timber. But I think the bird numbers are pretty diminished. There might be some preserve hunting here and there available, but for the most part,
Oh,
I doubt that there's much upland bird hunting going on down there right now.
I think Tennessee is pretty much a deer state. There is deer everywhere. And surprisingly, well, maybe not to a lot of people, but there is turkey everywhere. I mean, I see 15, 20 turkey almost every single day. I mean,
Is that an untapped part of the market that we haven't figured out yet, Wade?
What, to kill turkeys?
At least in our
Turkeys?
program.
Man, I don't know.
No turkeys.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't. And being in Nashville, there's a lot of transplants here, and I asked them if they've ever been hunting, and there's a lot of people from the West Coast that are settling down here in Tennessee. Nobody has any idea what pheasant hunting. I don't even know if they know what a pheasant looks like, to be honest, which is kind of shocking. But
Well, it's kind of interesting because and I think that's true. We take it for granted because you guys grew up around pheasant hunting, and the birds were here, and everybody did it. There was a time, probably people my age in Iowa, that's everybody hunted. They grew up that way.
Yeah.
And that was just the way it was.
A lot of people did it for food.
And I think the numbers now are it's not that way now, but I think at one time, my generation, that's just everybody hunted. That was just the way it was. You grew up hunting with your uncles and your dad and your grandfather, and they passed it on, and you passed it on, and that was just the way it was. But yeah, if you get outside of the Midwest, I think a lot of people don't know what it's like. We had a law enforcement hunt here a few weeks ago. And remember, we had guys in,
Yeah.
and I remember a guy telling me from Indiana, I think he was, he said, I saw my first pheasant out there by the driveway today. I said, you're kidding, No. He said, I didn't know those things were that big. And I said, well, yeah, they're pretty big. He said, well, couldn't really be that hard to shoot those, could it?
Yeah.
And I said, check in with me tomorrow after you come in for the field. Yeah, they could, yeah. I said, they look like it'd be so easy. They're so big, and they kind of, they're a big bird, and they kind of lumber off the ground, but they don't play fair.
No.
They don't play fair. And the part about playing fair is they don't want to come off the ground. There's where they don't play fair.
They want to run.
But
Well-
but it was interesting because those guys did come in later, and they were just captivated and by the sport, and were planning on making plans to come back, and hunt again because of the experience. And that's really the way it was for kids growing up. They, even though they grew up around it and knew dad hunting, when they got in the field for the first time, carried their gun for the first time, they were hooked pretty much for life. And we've missed that now. We don't have that anymore.
Yeah, and like I said, how my brain works, and it only works part of the time, but when it does, it's never when I want to do something with it. But I remember our old setter when we first got her, and I still remember points. I mean, I've walked in on thousands and thousands of points and shot hundreds and hundreds of birds, but there's just like certain memories when you're out there with your dad. Just it's quiet out there, and if we weren't fighting over who was going to control the dog and blow the whistle, we watched the dog and listened to the beeper, and I still remember even in spots in the field, like, oh man, there's been a rooster here before, and it's just when you're young, your brain, you get all that implanted in, because you're really focused and involved in what you're doing. And I guess I'm still like that today, but you know, a lot of those kids don't get that chance. And I see it, you know, at these youth hunts, these kids, you know, I'll never forget this kid walked up with this beautiful side by side 12 gauge, way too big for him. And he didn't want anything different. You know, he didn't know what he had, but he had his great grandpa's old double barrel shotgun. It's like, you know, mom and dad just said, well, here's the gun you got. You're going to take it. But, you know, he didn't have that sediment of what really that gun was. And, you know, my grandpa wasn't a big hunter. He did the war thing, and then he worked his fingers to the bone, and that's all he did is work. But, you know, my dad, you know, grew up around people that hunted, and, you know, he bought me my first shotgun, that, you know, my first 20 gauge. He knew that I loved it back then when I was just a little guy, and he made sure that stayed. And when we did talk, hey, you know, how was your pheasant hunt? And, you know, be farming. Hey, why don't you guys go walk the waterway? You know, and Dad would just do it, you know, and we still did that even when they're busy in the fall. That's just what happened, you know, and I think there's a big void there, you know, now.
Would you ever
Yeah.
kick any up when you were by yourself?
Yeah, we
As a
would.
kid?
And usually, I think Dad kind of knew, you know, that, you know, if I was coming out to the farm in the afternoon, if we had a half a day of school or on the weekend, we'd have the dog in the back of the truck, you know. We'd be going from field to field. We had an old Chesapeake, and he actually put a hook in the back of the truck under the topper. She didn't like being in the dog box. And he didn't, you know, we're farming, so he's got tools, and that's all in the way. And back then it was this big old wood box that was, once you got loaded, he didn't take it out, and she had a little tie in there, and you know, we'd get about halfway out to the farm, which was about 4 miles from the house, and she'd take a crap in it, so it'd be back there, make me gagging back there, digging it out, and like a giant hot box. But she'd be in the truck, you know. So when you knew he had that dog in the truck on Saturday or Sunday, we were going out to the farm, you know, at least we're gonna go get, you know, go sit, watch them fly out the end of the field rows, and then go hunt the fence row, you know. And I didn't, half the time I didn't shoot, and, you know, or didn't have a gun or couldn't, but he had his, you know, trusty wingmaster in the back and got some, and you know, I sat out that farm and out how many rounds of, you know, the old Henry lever action, how many 22 rounds, and I mean, pop cans and
So you start
stuff
out,
would be shredded to nothing. It's like, well, now what am I shooting at? Well, then I'd shoot the tile outlet and ping,
see
ping.
when you're a youngster like that, you start out as a blocker. They send you down and they say, you just stand down there at the end of the corn row. You just go down there and stand. And they're thinking that the kid down there will at least make those birds maybe hold up. And
Well, did you ever see the
and
movie
then-
Joe
and then-
Dirt?
And then 68 years later, you're down there blocking again.
Yeah.
It's all, yeah.
Sometimes I would prefer doing that, but you know, you ever saw the movie Joe Dirt?
I have.
You know, when he's adopted by that guy, and he shoots a duck, and he goes, see, now he runs out and gets the bird. The dog's sitting next to the hunter. He's training him, and he made Joe Dirt swim out there and get the bird. So
Yeah, well,
yeah, that was kind of me, you know. Go get it.
You were the
The
man.
dog didn't see it, but
but it was
no,
fun. You thought it was fun. And it was
oh yeah,
great.
and that was what I look forward to, and I still look forward to it. I'm just jazzed about. I just want to be hunting all the time. You know, you go out and feed the dogs every night, and you're like, I wish I could just let them go and let's go hunting.
Yeah.
But
We
Well, I'm
used to
sure
catch.
guy-
We used to collect the tail feathers over the season and put them in a vase, and by the end of the season, we'd have a pretty good little collection. And
Yeah.
that was kind of a
Yeah, your mother still has it.
yeah. We
Yeah,
used to do
several of
that all
those.
the time.
my mom didn't allow feathers in the house. My mom is definitely afraid of birds. She hates them. She'd have a little songbird in a cage, but
Really?
no pheasant feathers. They have leprosy and carry Ebola and E. coli.
You and your dad would have died a long time ago.
Oh,
then, right?
she was, you know, as Monday.
Maybe that's what's
you know.
wrong with you.
Yeah, it could be. That could very well be my issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, you didn't dare bring gross pheasant feathers in the house, or you were in deep crap.
So when we went down there too, we talked about the quail hunt down at Wayne Bear's place at Bear's Den. But one of the things we did, and you talked about shotguns and this youngster having this great granddad's old gun, didn't really know what it was, but he's got this gun. And maybe even his parents didn't really think too much about it other than it's just a gun, here, use it. But see, to me, I'm kind of one of those guys that's nostalgic enough to think that those guns are like those guns have their own lifeline in the sense that, you know, if you have a gun that was carried in the field by a friend or by a family member, it's just kind of like something that you want to cherish and keep. And if you get a chance to use that gun once in a while, I usually call them a memory hunt. I don't do it very often, but a few years ago at Christmas time, I got an old A5 that used to belong to my grandfather and my dad out, and it is a heavy old girl. And I decided to take it, and it was me and another guy were hunting, and ended up killing a rooster over Adeline with that old shotgun. And I don't think it had been shot since probably for 25 years up until that particular day. And then I put it back. But I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. Still shoots, still. But, you know, you do think a little bit about the people that carried that gun before you did, at least I do. And so when I'm in the field and guiding and somebody says, this is a gun that belonged to my grandfather or my dad or whatever, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I like hearing the story about it too.
Yeah. And so I've got one guy that has his grandfather's gun, and you know, he tells a story about how his grandfather got it, and you know, and the whole what his grandfather did with it, and how he ended up, you know, getting it after he passed on, and that kind of thing. And so I think that's a part of the upland hunting that is intertwined and connected that a lot of people don't see unless you grow up doing it. You don't see that side of it. But when we were at Bear's Den, I actually took that A5, which was my granddad's. And during the course of that quail hunt, all the boys, including my nephew, carried that gun at some point during the day. And I just thought it would be kind of cool to have that next generation to be able to say that that next generation got to carry granddad's gun, you know. It would have been their great-grandfather's gun. And I think they even killed birds with it, if I remember. I think all you guys ended up getting a bird or two with that old.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
I always wonder with
you
like
know,
those old legacy guns, if maybe like grandpa knew that it shot about 2 foot to the left and he was the only one that could use the damn thing.
well, he was a great shot, so he must have knew that because he. But yeah, I mean, it spent most of its life on a combine or a tractor. It was, you know, there's no bluing on it. I mean, it's just down to the metal, but it's really cool. It's a cool gun. It's an OA5, and it's been beat up, but that's the gun I remember as a kid. And I do remember watching him, you know, because back then everybody had pumps. I did. And Granddad had an automatic. And I remember as a kid thinking, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. He just keeps shooting that thing, and he doesn't have to, you know, eject any shells with it. He just keeps shooting. And I thought, man, that is just the neatest thing I've ever seen. And I was probably 12 at the time. And you know, he let me pick it up a few times and kind of carry it, but I never got to carry it into the field. But I do remember the day that and I don't know how many years later, that he said, you want to carry my A5? And I was like, yeah, Christmas time. You know?
Yeah.
And it was really cool for the first half hour. And that sucker was heavy. My arms were just, you know, burning, but I wasn't going to let on like they were. And I don't know if I killed anything with her. She kicked like a mule, that gun did. And and that's the thing the boys commented on after that hunt was, well, I think that kicks a lot more than that new gun and that, you know, well, of course, it doesn't have any of all that recoil stuff like the new shotguns do, you know, to ease that recoil. Boy, then you just took it. You took the pain, you know, that was a part of it.
Yeah. We got Grandpa's old Model 10 in the gun cabinet.
Cool.
And it's got the hammer on it, and I always wanted to carry it. Dad's like, that thing's dangerous. Yeah. That thing, you trip and fall. I'm like, well, I would pull the hammer back if I was ready to shoot, but you know, it'd shoot as many as you could shoot, but that hammer, and I think it went off on Grandpa one time. He didn't have a dog. He might have been hunting or messing with it, and he cocked it and had one ready to go, and it got put in the back of the closet and never got shot again. The
really great guys were like a safety coming off on the flush would cock at the time the bird got up. And there's the guys that were really and cock them up, and you know, and as the bird was getting up, do all that, mount the gun and cock it at the same time. And
well, I've done that because I forgot to load my gun before.
but but yeah, those were kind of cool that boys got to shoot that gun, and I just thought it was kind of a neat deal and a good memory to be able to say that, hey, I shot that old gun, and when I'm dead and gone, one of these guys will get it, and it'll stay in a gun case and come maybe or safe and come out once in a while. I hope it does. But the same is true with all the shotguns that I've acquired, and not a lot, but the ones that I have some history too, and so you hope that the next generation recognizes, gosh, that was granddad's gun or that's my dad's gun, and then it gets handed off to the next generation. You hope that's kind of what we hope to see. Now this Tyler has a couple girls. Now, nothing to say that his daughters can't be great shotgun shooters, because we see them every day down at the gun club, and they are the young ladies up here are on trap teams for the high schools. Have trap teams at several of them, and the girls are on the trap teams with the boys, and some of them girls can shoot.
They
I'm telling
outshoot
you,
them.
They are fantastic shots.
I think they're more patient at that point. When the bird's up there, I think they concentrate better. My sister.
So that's my challenge, is before I have to hang up the upland vest and call it quits, that I get to go into the field and hunt with my granddaughters a couple times, just to shoot some birds with them. And
that'd be cool.
And then the
It
next
would be
generation
interesting.
is yeah. So you can just start working on that. You can get them out to the shooting thing and work on some shotgun stuff. They're pretty young now, so they're too young now, but.
Yeah, we've done a little
but that day's
fishing. We
coming.
really haven't got outside too much. Just there's bicycles. We really haven't done too much outdoorsy type stuff quite yet, but we'll get there.
So what else? What do you think about when? What do you miss about bird hunting? I know you haven't been a chance to do it for a few years. What do you miss about it?
I miss, I don't know, just the camaraderie, the friendship that you build. You might know somebody, but you know them in a whole different level when you go, hunting, get up early and you're out hunting with them. They're just a different type of friend, I think.
You learn to trust somebody really quick when you go hunting with them, I think.
Oh, I agree too. You got to trust him that he's not gonna, shoot you. Basically, he's got to be able to trust you that you're not gonna shoot in his direction. So yeah, there's a big level of trust there, but it's just fun. Like if your buddy
Speaking
has,
of granddaughters, that was not a poltergeist in the background there. Just for our audiences listening, audio only.
I don't even know what happened. Did one of my daughters run by?
No,
I
we
heard him in the
we heard a
background.
a
Oh, I'm
screech.
sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
oh, that's part of it. That's part of it. We love that part of it.
But I had friends that I worked with every day at the sheriff's office, but there was only a handful of them that actually hunted too. So those guys were especially tighter with me because on our days off we go hunting. So I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. It's just a different type of bond that's forged when you're out and chasing pheasants and quail than
Yeah, I
say building a treehouse in the backyard. But
And I think when you add the dog in, that you have a dog that you get to put in the field and work, I think that adds to it as well. But yeah, we'll have to get you up here and get some. I know it's hard getting back home at especially this time of year. You got a lot of stuff going on, and it's difficult. But yeah, hopefully we'll get you up here at some point and chase a few birds again. And
yeah, I
You,
plan on it.
you have if somebody said, what is your favorite memory or story about bird hunting? Do you have one that you kind of sticks out, I guess?
Your go-to story when you're
Yeah.
My
It
go-to
could involve,
story.
could involve a dog, or it could involve a place that you were hunting, or a particular shot that you made, I guess. But
Oh boy, there's just so many good shots I've made, so I won't choose one of those.
I knew that was coming.
Uh,
Him and Travis are definitely brothers.
I'd say probably the location, maybe. I actually I really enjoyed hunting in South Dakota when we've been out there. The several times we've been out there, just the scenery difference between that and Iowa. I just like it out there. There's nothing out there. I mean, that's what I like about it.
Do you remember the bird drive that they did when we were out there that one time? You remember
The
that
one time we
experience?
were out there at the wild, what was that? He did rodeo bulls too, or something
Yes,
crazy like that.
the family did. They had 20,000 acres, and they during the hunting season they opened it up and had groups come in. We were hunting a separate little spot,
Yeah,
but
you're
but
right. I forgot about that story until just now.
the commercial guys came in and they needed our help. Remember that?
Yes, and they pulled up the school buses, and everybody got on, and we're kind of like, what the hell? And they just drove you out, and about every 20 feet, they kicked a guy out, and you just started walking for miles. And then at the very end, man, it was like just see,
And we had never experienced that before.
no,
We
and
didn't know what
I
was
don't really
going on.
like that type of hunting.
No, I
We
don't
did that
either.
once, and that was it. I am not doing that again. It wasn't fair. I mean, it was just it was crazy.
What was funny is we were supposed to be hunting a small group with dogs. Well, obviously there was really no reason to have dogs the way they were hunting. It was just basically a cattle drive is what it was. And they had a section of ground and they'd drop people off all around this section and then everybody start marching towards the middle.
Yeah.
And yeah, there would be birds in the march, but when you got to the center, I mean, all these birds were pushed and people started shooting in this circle, and it was just, yeah, it was pretty crazy. I thought it was,
Unsafe and just not
yeah.
fair. And yeah, there's another funny story about that hunting trip. Do you remember when we were hunting those timberline? I mean, I'm sorry, those bush lines, and we were hunting with a couple guys from Texas. And me and you, we had the dogs, and we were back, and we sent them. Oh my gosh, it must have been at least a mile down the road. We could barely see them, and we were working down the row, and then all of a sudden we saw them. They're the group that was blocking. They started running in circles, and then we saw these little. They looked like dogs. I thought they looked like dogs from where we were at. They were just scattering out from the bushes, and they're going crazy. They're going crazy, and we got down there and. Like, what the heck what happened down here? And they said, there's wild boars everywhere. And I remember looking at Dad going, wild boars in South Dakota? Like, what the? They were just escaped farm pigs from the next door neighbor. That's all they were.
They had turned wild, but they'd gotten out and you know, when you're not expecting it, one of them kind of comes out of the woods. It's a little bit, but I remember we would. If you remember, they had hedgerows out there. This guy had planted trees, 100,000 trees, and they had an old fire truck, and they would use the fire truck to water all these trees when they were, you know, first planted. And this was like 8 years later, and now the trees were, you know, 7, 8, 9 foot tall, and they were in 3 rows. Well, you know, since we had the dogs, we're inside the row, which is where the birds were, and so you'd put 2 guys on the wing out on the edges, and then I'd push down through the middle and push birds out. You'd send somebody down the end to block, and then about a quarter of a mile, and you'd push, and then about 40, 50 yards from the blockers, all hell broke loose. Birds were coming out, and
And it was pheasants and
I barely ever
grouse
got a
and-
shot because I was in there with all the, you know, but yeah, that's where we were pushing one of those hedgerows
Yep.
when the hogs came out of there, and these guys
The
were
neighbor's hogs came out.
Yeah, actually, I think they ended up shooting one if I remember.
I
But,
said I had pork chops for supper that night.
well, that was kind of the plan until they decided that maybe these hogs had been contaminated by something. I don't remember now what the story was, but
It was
yeah,
one
that
of
was
the
pretty
deer
crazy.
diseases or something. Blue tongue
Yeah,
or something.
yeah, these
Yeah.
hogs were eating some dead deer carcasses, and they were afraid that they had probably ingested some of the bad stuff or whatever. I guess DNR had said don't be eating those hogs because they're probably contaminated. But I do remember when they came to do that drive, they just needed to borrow a few bodies because they were going to make this big push. And you never see those British hunts where the guys stand on the kind of like they're 40 yards apart and they're standing on the road, and then the birds just start flying over.
Yeah.
And you have your couple box of shells, and you just stand in one place and you try to shoot these birds that are going Mach 5 as they come over the top of you. Well, that's what they were doing. And they pulled up in a truck, an army truck, and had the seats down the side of it. And it's full of these guys, and they looked like all of them had come from Cabela's or someplace. I mean, they had brand new coats and, you know, shotguns and stuff. And they said, we need some help. We need some pushers, and they they looked at Tyler and they said, "We want him." And I said, "Well, I could go along." And they went, "No, no, no, we don't want you. You're too old." And so they wanted a young guy to push through the stuff. And so then pretty soon the Army truck left, and we're standing there. And what was it? Probably 40 minutes later, we start hearing whistles, and the pushers are coming towards us. They pushed this big section of ground right towards where we were at, and we're standing in the gravel road, all linked up, 40 yards apart, and all of a sudden the birds just start coming out of this thing and flying over, and people are shooting and birds are dropping on the road. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And they're
I've never
running
seen
out. They're
anything
running
like it.
out of the thing. And but I'm not sure Tyler got to shoot. He was just a drover. He was just pushing them to guys like me that were out there. I ran out of shells. I was like, they're coming out of there too fast. When they'd come out of the trees, you had about a second and a half to figure out to recognize there was a bird there. But it just wasn't. It wasn't hunting that we went out there to do. It wasn't dog hunting, and so it was kind of interesting. But that was
Yeah.
kind of a fun deal.
I don't think those guys had dogs at all, did they?
Don't think so.
I think
Yeah,
that's
they
why
might have
they
been
had
a
to hunt.
few.
I
There
think
might
that's
have been
why
one
they
or
were
two in
hunting
the
like
group.
that. Yeah.
But they were just basically pushing them, and then when once they would, I remember the push there. They killed like 200 birds, put them in a pile, and then they all got on the truck and they drove off, and then went to do it again in another field. And that's when we went, we're gonna go dog
Yeah.
Do our
hunt
own
someplace
thing,
else
yeah.
and do our own thing. But
So we don't care if we even get any. We just
Yeah.
like being out there.
Yeah. And
So-
that's a big thing that's removed, back to the kid thing. That's a big thing that's removed. They just think they want instant gratification, and they're not seeing, they're not, I guess they're not looking, okay, these dogs are, all that guy had to do was, hey, or whistle or whatever, and dog turns around, comes back, and the dog's pointing and they're stepping around, the dog's not moving, and that bird's right there, and they finally, I think we grew up that way, Tyler, knowing, okay, let's let the dog work, let it do. They're wanting, now everything's at the end of the push of a button, and or a text message, and they just don't.
You could also
they don't see all
tell, paying attention to your dog or even your buddy's dog. You could tell if something was going to
Yeah.
happen just by the way the
Yeah.
dog was acting.
Yeah, and the guys today, a couple of them never hunted with a dog that really just gets out and goes, and they have a lab or something that runs out in front of them, but they learn quick. Okay, look at that dog. He's on. Oh, I started hearing, hey, this one's Birdie over here.
The last time we went to South Dakota was a number of years ago, but it was kind of one of those. I think you arranged it. You remember that, where you found a farmhouse?
Yep.
We cooked our own meals. We stayed in this old farmhouse, and then you just basically walked out of the house and started hunting. The hunting was right there, so it was kind of cool. But
That's pretty ideal, actually. I mean,
Oh yeah,
the freezer, you come in, clean your birds, put them right in the freezer. The grill was in the same room. I mean, yeah, it was nice.
yeah, and it was, like I said, it wasn't a wasn't a super
Was no Holiday Inn
elaborate.
by any
No,
means.
it was a super elaborate place, but it was had a place to shower and place to keep your dogs and kind of inside out of the cold weather at night, and place to and like I said, you just walked out and did the hunt there, and we did that with some friends, one of his buddies, and that kind of thing. But I think those kind of hunts are kind of cool because you make the arrangements. Sometimes you don't know what to expect till you get there, and then we decided maybe that wasn't the place we wanted to go back to, but
well,
No,
Tyler, if you were
but it
gonna,
was fun.
yeah, if you were gonna
Good.
plan a hunt to go on, just you and your dad and your brothers, what would be the hunt you guys you'd plan and say, hey, meet me here, let's go.
Well, I think I've always wanted to do one of those deep south quail hunts on one of the old type of plantation type of style hunts, where the guys, on horseback. I've always thought that would be kind of cool, but I don't know, South Georgia, I mean, yeah, something like that.
What a
would be-
coincidence.
that's only 5 hours for you too. 3 hours,
if that,
3 hours, I think.
I think I'm 3 hours to Atlanta as I sit.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and only birds he sees are the loony birds on Broadway after 8 o'clock down there, probably in Nashville.
Well, that's something we might have to explore. swing through Nashville and pick you up on the way to Tallahassee or Georgia or down there to do one of those quail hunts. We know people.
Tallahassee,
I think
Florida, huh?
Well, it's in the Panhandle right there next to Georgia, so that's kind of the hot spot for a lot of the plantation kind of quail hunting that goes on down there, as I understand it. So
we know a guy.
yeah, we know a lot of guys, but
Well,
yeah,
that
that's why
sounds
we kind of
very interesting.
yeah. Well, we kind of wanted to, like I said, get you on the podcast to get people. People have heard about you and they've probably seen you in the videos, and you hadn't been on the podcast yet. So we wanted to kind of get you out here and talk to you a little bit and let the audience kind of understand who you are and what it was like growing up hunting in the Kisner family, and then we'll hopefully have you on in the future as we do some other guests. There's going to be times when I'm not available or Thomas is tied up, and we're always looking for a kind of a second host to help out and do some interviewing, if you will, and as we grow the podcast. And so we appreciate your time, and I know you got some other things to do with those girls tonight, so
Yeah.
we
It sounds like
appreciate it.
dinner time's getting ready here. So
Yeah, and so let's see what we can arrange maybe in the future sometime, and maybe we'll get you out bird hunting again. Get the dust off that old shotgun that hasn't been shot for a while.
yeah, the old Model 12 has not come out of the safe very recently. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you got the 05, the old A5 too.
yeah. But she's I hate to get a scratch on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're like we tell everybody, but obviously you jump. Flights to Cedar Rapids are pretty cheap. Just saying.
You'd think the company could pay for a guy to bring him up here to hunt with
Well,
a couple clients or something.
If I could talk one of you guys to come down and babysit, then I'll come that direction. no
Grandpa.
problem.
Hey, Uncle Will could come down and do
Yeah,
that.
there you
I
go.
bet
I don't get paid doing this.
No,
buddy-
you come on up and I'll show both you and Travis how to shoot.
Well, buddy,
if you'd
thanks
like.
for your time. Good seeing you.
Yeah.
Glad we had you on the show, and we'll have you do some podcast stuff later with us in the future as we grow this thing, and we will check in with you later. And that takes us back to we were going to talk a little bit about the Garmin collars thing. We could probably do that another night.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of cool to reminisce with him about
Yeah.
About the hunting, and that's the stuff that we miss a
Yeah.
lot of times today.
And he didn't throw you under the bus once. Like,
well, he's a good son,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why he's your favorite. No.
Yeah, we've talked about that before the podcast.
Yeah,
There's some
No,
limits.
and
but-
it's good to see that. I grew up with two sisters, and they could give a hoot and a hanny about hunting, and it's nice to see you guys have that special
Yeah,
bond, and you can
yeah.
share that stuff. My dad and I do, and just want to say a prayer for him. He's having some issues with health and his
Yeah,
back,
well,
so
we wish
tomorrow's going to be tough without him. I think he's going to come along, but
Well, good. I will.
getting
like I said,
emotional. I don't know why.
we'll be thinking about him.
But we'll get him out there, let him get on the dogs. We got the side by sides already ready, loaded up, and see if we can't get him out there and just have him enjoy it. He loves the dogs,
bet.
and that's kind of our outro is take a kid hunting. If you know a neighborhood kid that's interested, and there's always that kid you drive by,
Well-
you got the dogs, you're walking the dogs or whatever. Just take him. You don't have to. He doesn't have to shoot, and really you don't have to shoot, but get permission from his parents and get dad out there, whether you're mom and
take that family member hunting.
Yep.
Maybe that family member that hasn't hunted for a while, but get them out.
Yeah.
Give them a call. Say, would you like to go hunting with me? Then maybe they won't, but when they're gone, you won't get that chance.
Yep.
So while those family members are still here, get them in the field again if you can, and as they say,
keep their nose in the wind. Can't talk.
see you next time.